Executive Order number 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus.
Motion to submit that motion, sir.
Vice Chairman Gooch made the motion, second by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. I'll also consider that vote a roll call, so we're all present, looks like. Okay, next thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes for the June 23rd, 2020 meeting, and I'll call on our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Gooch.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've read the minutes and find everything to be in order, so my motion is to approve.
Motion?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Next up is our investment report, and we'll call on Mr. Beatty. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. We were at 0.38 on LGIP for the month of June, 0.31 for the month of July, so that makes our effective rate 0.57. So we had a bid in the month of June, and this is the first time that we've taken a CD bid that's actually paying us 0.60 for 6 months. So it's actually paying a little better than what our rate is, and we've got another bid tomorrow. So we'll just start testing the market and putting some money out on CDs as long as we can get better rates. And you can see we took a 6-month bid because it was actually 10 basis points better than a year. And I'm not sure at the end of 6 months, I don't think rates will be any better, but I'm not sure they'll be any worse. So we picked up 10 basis points that we couldn't have gotten, and that just seemed like the sweet spot to be at. So at this point, we'll start trying some other things to get as good a yield as we can. But it just is what it is.
Motion to approve the report.
I got a motion to approve from Commissioner Johnson.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Gooch. Any discussion? Call roll, please, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next up is our fund condition report, and we'll call on our finance director.
Thank you. We'll start with the development tax. For last fiscal year, we received $6,090,000 for the year in development tax. Our cash balance at the end of June totaled $292,401,000, with $262,149,000 being operating funds, $30,252,000 being borrowed funds. Okay, if we can, I'd like to just kind of go over the results, kind of like our play-by-play. How did we end when we closed our books? I've passed out and I sent everyone an email prior to the meeting that kind of summed up all of our activities with revenue, presenting to you what was over, what we realized over, what we budgeted, and then the total amount of our unspent appropriations. So in the general fund, we received $2,798,000 over what we had projected, and we did not spend $8,491,000. Normally, we expect to see unspent in our personal wages and benefits because we budget 100% employment for the whole year, and that never happens. People terminate. So of the total amount of the general fund, we spent 92.87% of our appropriations. The other large fund is our general purpose school funds. They received $751,000, almost $752,000 over the estimated revenues, but they did not spend $17,235,000. They spent 95.89% of their budget. So what does that mean when we move into next fiscal year using the actual numbers? So right now, our unassigned fund balance in the general fund is at 34.4%. Solid waste is at 70%. 70% of appropriations, next year's appropriations. And let's see, the other one I did was schools is sitting at 10.2%, and debt service is at 90%. So we go into this year in good shape. That concludes my report,
I
Commissioner.
always like to hear good news, and that is good news. Do I hear a motion or any questions for Lisa?
I'll make a motion that we approve her report.
I have a motion and a second to approve the report. Mr. Stevens and Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion or questions for Lisa? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next up is the risk management financial report. We'll call on Mr. Elam. Seems like I just heard what I'm thinking I'm fixing to hear again here in a minute, or at least part of it.
Good evening. Okay, so looking at the current year revenue over expenditures, you see that it's on the plus side. Also on the fiscal year, you also see where revenues are exceeding expenditures. If you flip over to the next page on your tracker, you'll see for the month of June, the revenue was $7,244,730. Expenditures was $10,410,204 for a negative $3,165,474. For the calendar year, you have $48,306,953 in revenue. In expenditures, you have $40,183,282 for a difference of, on the positive side, revenue is $8,123,721. If you look down, with employees of 6,242. On the fiscal year, you'll see the totals, and this is for the entire year, you will see $80,178,931 in revenue. Expenditures, you'll see $79,466,833, and you will see a difference of $712,098. I would point out just a couple of things really quick here. And I think what we see happening, if you look at the last 2 months, or you may even go back 3 months, you'll see how things have flip-flopped from the coronavirus, where you were seeing people weren't going, they weren't doing the elective procedures, and then now you're beginning to see that trend pick back up again in the month of June. Moving on to the 266 report. You see the graph here, we did better than we did last year. I will move over to the next page, the tracker. For the month of June, you had $25,169.75 in claims paid. And last year, it was $51,646.03. Year to date, last year was $785,850.94, compared to this year at $637,004.73, and we're running at about 81% of what we were last year. I will break that number down, the $25,169.75. Of that, workers' comp was $2,629.71, and OJI was $22,540.04. And the legal expenses, on the next page that you have, county attorney legal expenses, you will see $46,302.14 compared to last year at $15,994.45. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Elam? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Ed, are you going to do this risk management committee recommendations, the 500 for your flex spend? Do we want to look at that tonight, Lisa? It's on our agenda. You just covered it on the last meeting, so.
I can cover it. It's not really a budget item, is it? But, yeah, I can cover it. It'd be fine. I left my paperwork in the back, but on the flex spending account, the Internal Revenue Code has changed to where it would allow to go from $500 to $550. The flex spending account is an account that the employees contribute to. It's not any type of contribution by the Rutherford County. And this is, you see some changes that's being made to try to give some people some relief. So it's a rollover amount to where you can put in a certain amount of money pre-tax to go towards your medical expenditures, and then after the end of the year, they'll roll over 500 in the past. Now they're asking for 550. We have to have this go through before, we can't just make that change ourselves. We have to have the commission to give a resolution for its approval.
The steering committee just recommended that a few minutes ago, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The steering committee recommended it, and also the Benefits and Insurance Committee did a unanimous approval to move it forward.
We voted on at our county commission meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, are there any further questions on this issue for Mr. Elam?
So do we need a motion to send this to the full?
We do.
Okay, I'll move for, to send this to the full commission with a positive recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Gooch. Do I hear a second?
This is Rhonda Allen. I'll second.
Okay, I have a second from Commissioner Allen. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the assistance to firefighters grant supplement and related budget amendments for fire and rescue, and I assume Chief Farley, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If y'all will recall, we asked permission to apply for a $100,000 grant to the AFG, the Assistant Firefighters Grant, which is for COVID-19. It's a supplemental award. There's a 10% match of the total project cost from the non-federal funds of unassigned fund balance. The grant allowed for reimbursement of some cleaning supplies, N95 respirators, and goggles previously purchased, as well as new purchase of eye protection goggles and 3.5 face reusable masks. We were able to apply some of the things we've already bought in the past to this grant, so I'm asking for your approval and to pass this budget amendment where we can start using the grant.
Are there any questions for Chief Farley? I saw this the other day in public safety. Basically, I think what we're getting around 89,000, or maybe, I think it's 89,000 something.
I think it was 93, but we applied some expenditures to it, I believe.
Okay.
And this will be used for fire rescue, EMS, and the sheriff's office. It will cover everybody, everyone's employees in those 3 departments.
These are basically expenses we've incurred that we've got to pay for. This grant is going to let us only pay for 10% of what we've actually spent. So do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Piercy gives a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Gooch. Any questions for our chief? Hearing none, call roll, please.
This also includes the budget amendment.
Yes, it does.
This is the budget amendment.
I don't have that in front of me. Let me pull
It'll be the first item
First
on that
page.
agenda.
So just so you're clear, the amendment is for $84,971 in revenue, and then we've got a requested increase of $93,468. So that's the one we're talking about.
Taking $8,497 out of fund balance
Okay. And
for our portion.
Mr. Piercy, is that okay with your motion? I believe you made the motion, and
I'm fine.
who made the second? Gooch, and they're fine there. Okay, so that is added to the motion. Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. Okay, motion
Thank
carries.
you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, next up is the Election Commission grant for, let's see, with state and related budget amendments. And is Mr. Farley here, or Lisa will be covering that?
I'll do it. So this is an amendment. It's an amendment and a request to accept the grant from the State of Tennessee Department of State Division of Elections. And this is a grant 100% funded of $266,200, with $150,225 going to election workers, $9,315 for Social Security, $2,180 for Medicare, $50,000 for postage, and $54,480 for office supplies. And this is for expenses related to the August and November 2020 elections.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Any other questions for Lisa on this?
One other point, just so I'll get it in the minutes, is the revenue line item changes from what is on your iPad. It should be 101-47303-03020.
Count number?
That's the account number.
Okay. Had me confused looking there for a minute, so I'm not
Right.
seeing that number. All right. Any other questions for Lisa? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes, I was going to make a motion, but I'll second Commissioner Johnson.
All right. We have a little electronic delay sometimes, I'm afraid. So we have a motion, a second. Are there any other questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, and motion carries there. Okay, next up is a reclassification of election commission positions. Mr. Alan Farley is who I was looking for, not Chief Farley. Anyway, this will fall back to Lisa again.
So there was an employee that was with the county for a long time who retired prior to June 30th. Of course, we budgeted into this year with that employee being in place. So as she's retired, then Mr. Farley wanted to move some duties around and requested that we downgrade that particular position from a Deputy Clerk 3 to a Deputy Clerk 2 and change position number 1038, which is a grade 10, to a grade 16, which is a Deputy Clerk 2. So for the same amount of money, he's downgrading one and upgrading one.
Basically a wash.
It'll be a wash. Actually, probably be a net increase to a net savings.
Okay, so there will be a slight decrease in the overall pay going out then. Okay, do we have any questions about this reclassification? Hearing no questions, we'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Gooch makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Piercy. Do I hear any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next up is the 2020 Edward Byrne JAG Grant MOU with the City of Murfreesboro. And let's see, Preble, welcome. Action, I'm sorry.
I said, it looks like my last name changed on number 9, but it's okay.
Well,
It's a joke, Mark. The Burns Grant is something we've been having ever since I've been back anyway, so this, I guess, would be going into the 4th year. It's a split with the city. The city maintains the filing, and I need y'all to approve the interlocal agreement with the City of Murfreesboro, and we should receive money in the amount of $28,362.
And this is something we see in public safety, and y'all see each year too. This is a reoccurring grant. Are there any questions for Preble? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson makes a motion. Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, Preble, please continue.
I have several general fund budget amendments, and I take it I can do all these at one time. I need to recognize in the amount of $36,534 insurance recovery, and I need to put that in motor vehicles. I need to appropriate funds received in April from a AAA grant of $1,000, and I'm going to put that in our other supplies and material. Recognize revenue for our first installment of the COMPS grants that y'all approved for us to hire 5 people. Altogether, I think that's about $299,000 that we will be appropriating into salary line items and to pay the 5 officers. Need to transfer funds in the proper account. We got these 2 line items confused, but I need to take $1,628 $1,628 out of staff development and put that in my in-service training. That's a THSO law enforcement liaison grant. And I need to transfer funds from training to supplies for the THSO teen driving safety grant in the amount of $9,334.
Have any questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion on these transfers.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Dodd, I believe that's
Yes, sir.
correct. Thank you. Makes a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And I didn't catch who that was. That
Mr. Stevens.
okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. And again, motion carries. Okay.
And last is our 121 account, and we'll request an approval of special purpose fund budget amendment of $47,500 and placing them in confidential maintenance and repair building and maintenance and repair vehicles.
If you recall, this is something they don't really know what the revenue is till they get it, and they bring it to us when they do get that. And then they have specific places they can spend that. So there's not a whole lot we can ask about where that money is actually going. But having said that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Dodd and Commissioner Piercy. Any questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Again, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next up is the general fund budget transfer for juvenile detention and the reclassification of positions. And welcome, Ms. Duke.
Thank you. I have before you a request to move $3,200 from our sergeant's line item into our secretary's line item. I've had a couple vacancies this year, and I'm shifting responsibilities to some different staff members. So this would help us, I think, have a leaner department or an organization and save us a little money in the long run.
So this is actually a decrease in your overall budget?
It is.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Commissioner Johnson,
Second.
and I didn't catch who that second was.
Commissioner Dodd?
Commissioner Dodd, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I have a motion, a second. Are there any questions for Ms. Duke? Hearing none, call roll.
Does this include the reclassifications of the positions that are mentioned in the budget amendment?
I'm sorry, it does. I didn't go that far, but it does. I've got a sergeant position that I would like to switch over to a detention officer position.
You're also switching the position 1913 from an admin 2 to admin 3?
That's correct. That's the 3,200.
Commissioner Dodd, are you okay with including that in your motion?
I will in my second, yes.
And your
Mr.
second.
Johnson.
Excuse me. And our first,
Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Johnson, are you okay with that?
Okay.
Okay. So we're voting on not only the budget amendment, but also the change in, what is that? Change in position.
The positions, yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Lynn. And thank you for keeping us straight there, Mark. Okay, number 12, general fund budget amendment for emergency management. Chris, welcome.
EMA is requesting a budget amendment request. This request is to provide funds for EMA's budget to support the COVID-19 response. Because of the continuation of the pandemic in our county and state, it appears that that specific funding is needed to assist the departments in their response. Instead of placing funds in various budgets, we hope to track all expenses through this line. The expenditure in this line will be submitted to the Public Safety Assistance Grant for reimbursement. And EMA is filing these claims and will assist the departments in determining if the requested purchase would qualify.
Okay, and we'll probably be seeing more of these type items as this continues. Do we have any questions for the director? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, Commissioner Gooch.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Johnson. Any questions? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. And again, motion carries. Thank you,
Commissioner,
Chris. Okay, next up is a general fund budget amendment for, an application for Petco Foundation grant for PAWS. Mr. Gregory?
Good evening. We're asking to apply for $44,160 to the Petco Foundation. No county match on that. If it is received, it's going to be used for adoption events, play yard upgrades, and supplies for our volunteer and foster program.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions for Michael? This is some.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Dodd seconds. Any further questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner P.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay, next is the Highway Fund Budget Amendment. I saw Mary there. I didn't know if Greg was hanging around or not, but I guess, Mary, you can take that, or is that the way?
Yes, sir, it's just me tonight. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We're bringing, we've kind of let you know that this was going to come again. What I have is the budget amendment for the Plainview road area project improvements. This is the remaining money of the initial $3 million that was budgeted last year, or done the amendment last year. This year we were 1.9 million that was able to be put back in fund ending balance. And just like we had done last year when we figured out what we had put back in each account number. So what you are seeing is what was left as of June 30th, 2020. So we're wanting to move this back in so we can continue. Of course, we've not stopped on the project, but continue paying the bills on the project. So it is a total of $1,916,378 divided between the same accounts that the money was in initially last year.
Okay, you've heard the request, or Commissioner Johnson?
This passed the road board committee this morning unanimously. This is basically a housekeeping measure. Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the annual health department contract, and I don't see Dana, so I assume Lisa.
Oh, she's online here.
Oh,
I'm on
there you
Zoom.
are. I didn't look over my shoulder. Go ahead, Dana.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I bring to you this afternoon the annual contract for the health department. These are pass-through dollars that the state reimburses the county for. They did add a position onto there. It is part of what I budgeted for this year, so it's all the same. They added an extra clerical position.
Okay, this is something we see yearly, and this is this state money or federal or both, Dana?
Yes, it's state money.
Okay.
Yes, and it's all passed through. You guys don't pay any on this.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this passed through Health and Ed unanimously as well. Like you said, this is just an annual sort of routine amendment for us. So I'll make a motion that we approve.
I have a motion. Thank you.
I'll second that.
And a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Mr. Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. And the motion carries. Okay. Thank you, Dana.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
All right. Okay, next up is the general purpose school fund budget amendment, and we'll call on, I guess, we've got some school board representation, Mr. Spurlock, and also Doug. Welcome, guys. All right.
All right, good evening, everyone. Well, let me give you a little update on where we are as far as opening schools, because it pertains to this amendment here. We currently have about 16,200 kids will be doing distance learning, and the rest of them currently will be going to traditional. We didn't anticipate that many. That's pretty a good bunch. And it brings us to this amendment here for our cafeteria fund, Fund 143. We do have a cash flow as we start up the year, but however, with that many kids out, and depending on what occurs when we bring them back in, we're going to need additional cash flow. So we're requesting to amend that budget and add $1.5 million from, well, actually we were going to take $1.5 million from unassigned fund balance. However, we found out that our local sales tax numbers came back in much higher than we had budgeted. So we would request to take $750,000 from the unassigned fund balance, which would bring that balance down to, let's see, am I right here? Is that it right there?
Yes, sir.
$41,894,902. And then we take the $750,000 where we increased our budget for our local sales tax option to $67,635 and put that into our cafeteria fund. So that'd be $1.5,750,000 will be coming from our unassigned fund balance, and the additional $750,000 will be coming from our local sales tax budget for this coming year. I'd like to say our money that we received in 1920 actually came in over $500,000 than we budgeted for the 1920 school year. And even with the budget that we're budgeting now, we just increased it a little bit, a little less than $700,000. It's still going to give us a good conservative budget for the revenue there.
This is really two amendments.
It is. So do we need to take them one at a time?
I mean, I think
It's up to the committee.
It's
You
two
want to hear both
amendments.
of these together?
it's both the general purpose school fund budget and then the cafeteria budget.
Yeah.
That's the two I'm saying.
Want to separate these, or can we take them together?
That's Mark.
Mark?
You can put them together?
Fine with putting them together because they're related.
If I don't hear any of the committee members objecting, we'll take these together then.
All right, motion to approve these two amendments, $750,000 from the unassigned fund balance and $750,000 from Fund 40210 local sales tax of $750,000 into the 143 centralized cafeteria fund.
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarification, at our Health and Ed Committee meeting, when Doug presented this to us, he said that he would not automatically be moving 1.5 million, that it would be up to. So his plan, it was to spend this money on an as-needed basis for cash flow. And if he didn't need it, he wouldn't use it. The primary function of this money, though, is payroll, for us to be able to continue to pay cafeteria staff and not furlough folks, because then when kids do come back in, you're going to have a hard time filling those positions again. So I think it's imperative that we do this. I just don't know if we need it specifically to be worded that it's up to 1.5 million or if it's fine the way it's been worded.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Commissioner. That's correct. When we up to, that's a good point. And quite frankly, as we get into this, as we look at these students that are doing the distance learning, we'll have to determine how many we're getting supplemented by the federal government and actually how many we'll be selling. And we did know from last spring that there was a dip in the revenue that we had in that fund.
Okay, so you've heard the request on these two amendments. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve up to 1.5 million in these transfers on an as-needed basis for continuation of payrolls.
Okay, we have a motion, and that'll actually cover both amendments here. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Dodge seconds. Are there any other questions for Superintendent?
Question.
Mr. Piercy.
Back earlier when we were listening to your budget and all, you were presenting everything, I had kind of inquired on maybe our custodial help could have got a raise, of some time because way they're involved in all this. Well, this extra sales tax money, could it be any way they could get anything out of that, or is it tied up?
It's, to be honest with you, it's very conservative. I think we're a little over 700,000 that we have right there. But as we see it come in, we could probably revisit that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Commissioner Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say, Mr. Superintendent, 16,000?
200, yes, sir. As of today, 16,200 students that will be doing distance learning.
Now, distance learning means they're not coming to school at all.
They will actually, with our CARES Act money, we purchased an online platform that the teacher will use in the classroom for those students that are at home, simultaneously while they're teaching the kids that are in the classroom.
Okay, so they're kind of being in a class, but they'll be at home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, what percent, roughly, is? It's
somewhere around 30%, 33%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
I prefer 50%, but,
Any further questions? Hearing none, let's call roll. Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. See, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. I know that y'all have received monies from the government for PPE. How are you looking on that? Because I know this is going to get expensive, cleaning these classrooms, having masks available for the children and the teachers, cleaning supplies.
They're doing a real good job on it. What they've done, well, they're doing a good job, period. But on the teacher supplies, which is your sanitizer, wipes, and also masks and gloves and things like that, we will actually, and I got an email today, we'll actually our lead custodians at each school will register, and as it's depleted, they will put in a requisition to replace that. Now, I don't know how long that'll last, but it's supposed to last, supposed to carry on a pretty long time.
Please keep us updated.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the Tennessee Library and Archives grant for county archives. John, are you hiding out there somewhere? I assume not. Is he? Mr. Lodell?
I don't see him.
I don't see him. Lisa, would you take this one, please?
This is a request to apply for a grant with the Tennessee Library and Archives. I mean, it's just asking for permission to apply. Grant funds are available for shelving units, acid-free folders and boxes, other necessary archival supplies and environmental. Well, there's a whole listing of the things that's on your iPad of the things that it's that they could use it for, and they're up to $5,000 for local archives.
Is this matching?
I don't think so.
Basically,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Was that Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
And a second.
Mr. Dodd.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Mr. Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay. Next, we'll be talking about our general obligation bond initial resolution, and we'll turn that over to Lisa.
Yes. Okay. So the next three things has to do with with debt service and our debt. The first one is the initial bond resolution. In our listing of capital projects that we will be borrowing for is a mixture of schools and general capital projects. Generally, schools doesn't have to go through an initial resolution, but since we're doing this for one, we'll do it for all. I sent you an email earlier listing out all the projects that we had listed, including the amount that were estimated for the city of Murfreesboro share. It's at $89,297,413. On the general side, I've estimated $11,781,000. Now I have a caveat on one of these, and that is the one-stop shop estimate, where it should be working through the process before we go to market. But we wanted to put it in there so that we're not behind. So we're getting ahead, but I just want to let you know that that one stop is in the numbers. So the initial resolution lists out all the projects that we're going to be funding. It's not detailed in that second, whereas it lists all the projects. I won't read them all, but it's very broad, and it's acquisition of land, design, site development, constructing, improving, renovating, repairing equipment of buildings, and for school facilities, and all the costs that go along with that. So the reason for doing this initial, it's of course driven by the county projects, and it is out and it's publicized for the public. If there is more than 10% of the registered voters sign up and say we don't agree, then we'll have to back up. But typically that's pretty difficult to do in I don't think I've ever seen it, that the county has gone through that in the time that I've been. But it is a process to allow the public to veto this. So that is the first resolution. That's the initial. The next resolution.
Can we vote on these all together, or do we need to separate these?
It can, but I just kind of wanted to give y'all a flavor of what is the difference between the initial and the final. So the final resolution actually authorizes the mayor to sell bonds. So we're doing this so that everything is done. The actual bond size is likely to be below that not to exceed. They gross it up, I say they, Stevens, grosses up the number. They build in a 1% cushion in case the investors bid the minimum allowed, which is 99%. He says, in this environment, it's very unlikely bidders will use the 1% allowance. Instead of bidding a discount, and this is what we've seen in previous ones, bidders often bid a premium. His expectations, this is Sam's expectations, is that certain costs of the issuance, such as the rating fees, might drop if the size issue drops below the $100 million mark. And as you know, the bond size, typically as we do this, once, if there's a large premium, we resize the issue so that the net is what you have authorized us to borrow. So I tell you that to, again, as my expectation, you've already approved everything else in this, in this estimate, except for the one-stop shop, and I do expect that to go through in this cycle. So the first request is to approve the initial resolution to borrow.
Okay, do you want to go ahead into the...
To do that motion first.
One thing I want to interject, of course, we have not discussed the one-stop shopping, and I know the mayor wants to talk about this too, but one thing I want to point out is this just gives us the option of not having to republicize this and wait another 20 days, and that could make a difference in this market. I don't know if you mentioned percentage, I may have missed that, but I know what Williamson County just went to the bond market and extremely low rate, and now's a good time for us to get on in the market if it's possible. At least if you got some of those numbers.
I do that. Williamson County sold 20-year bonds last week. Now they're AAA, but we ought to get close, at 1.45%. Now, we'll do our 20 days, so we are not expecting to get in the market to lock in this rate for at least another 6 weeks. That's a caveat, so a lot can happen between now and 6 weeks, but we're starting the journey.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to give you an update on the one-stop facility out on Fortress and Blaze Drive. Got notice last week from STEM, the Office of All Rental Property for the state of Tennessee. They have received all the quotes. Of course, we quoted. Our quote went in at $18 a square foot that we would build for Ms. Kroll's office, second location for the clerk's office. And in addition to that, the Department of Safety wants for their driver testing facility, as well as their where you get your tag, not where you get your tags, it's the
license. Your license?
Yeah, license, like we have over on Middle Tennessee Boulevard right now. And I think that she said, my recollection, that she had to give her report and recommendation to the Commissioner of Safety, Jeff Long, by the 24th. And once that's done, then it will go to the State Building Commission for the October 1st meeting for final approval. But in talking with Bart Klein, our architect, he says usually when the commissioner signs off on it and sends a recommendation to the State Building Commission, it's kind of a done deal. You can go ahead and start working and putting together the plans on that. I feel very confident that we're going to be successful in this. Our $18 a square foot for that project, it should pay out at $18 a square foot for the cost of what we're having to build and lease to them. If we set it up, depend on how Lisa wants to set it up, but it should pay for itself in about 12 years of what we're going to charge them based on that square footage times the $18 a square foot commercial rate. So I feel confident that because we're not having to buy property and we're not having to pay taxes, property taxes, we'll be very competitive compared to anybody else, especially with that type of a location to house Lisa, Department of Safety, and in the back, the THP, Highway Patrol, will have their facility in the back.
Thank you, Mayor.
There's no more hurdles that the general service is going to throw at it.
We've done all we can do, and it's up to them to make their recommendation now. It's taken.
Somebody finally got their attention.
Yeah, finally got their attention. It's so frustrating dealing with state government. You know, I know it gets worse. It seems like with the COVID, it made it even worse because nobody's working in the offices. So, but we're much closer. As I told Ms. Kroll, we're much closer than we've ever been on getting that project off the ground.
Okay, you've heard the discussion. Are there any other questions for Lisa concerning the general obligation bond?
One other statement. Looking forward to seeing some ground turn, aren't you, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
What is the foundation for the $5.3 million estimate? Have we received bids, or is that just the architect's guess, or?
The architect, based on the square footage, all the drainage easements, he put together a pretty comprehensive estimation on cost of the project, as most architects usually do, and so that's what we went with.
By the way, let me point out something. Is we're not voting on whether to do this or not.
That's correct.
What we're voting to do is the bond issuance. Now, what Lisa has done is she's put the money in there for that project if the commission approves it. If the commission does not approve that, and that has to go through all the committees just like it normally does, then that money will never be touched, and she actually we won't borrow it. So I just want to make that clear. She's trying to show you the difference between having that money in there and not. If she, in the initial talking about this issuance, as long as we advertise it and the public gets to see that money's in there, then we don't have to come back again. So I think that's what the object is.
And Mr. Chairman, it's not a done deal. I mean, the recommendation could come back, then they give it to someone else. So then I'll come back to you at that point in time and say, we were not successful in our bid to the state to rent them that space, build to suit. So then my recommendation would come back, since we already have the property, that we just go ahead and build our county clerk's office standalone.
Basically, this is just contingent on everything falling in place, correct?
Yes, sir.
Need a motion to approve?
I do.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do we need to add a figure to that, Lisa or Mark?
We'll just put it out there. Resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $102,430,000 in aggregate principal amount in one or more series of general obligation bonds of Rutherford County, Tennessee, making provisions for the issuance, sale, and payment of said bonds, establishing the terms thereof, and disposition of proceeds therein. You know what? I think I just read the one for the final. That was the final.
101,075.
It's the same amount, yeah. It's the same amount, but what I just read was the one for the resolution for the final. This one is initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $102,430,000 of general obligation bonds of Rutherford County, Tennessee. A short and sweet one.
Okay. Is that okay with you and your motion, Commissioner Johnson? Do I hear a second on this bond issuance? Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any other discussion or questions for Lisa or anyone else? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. I think we lost Commissioner Allen there for a second. Okay, Lisa, if you would continue.
Yes, and I just read you earlier the resolution for the final. Same amount. Authorize the issuance of not to exceed $102,430,000 in aggregate principal bonds.
The one is just for advertisement, and this one is for...
Is the real one.
Real one. Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Johnson moves.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Gooch. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so this next one, those that have been around, I guess everybody that's on the call has been around long enough to experience refunding issues when it makes sense. Because of the low rates is what we're looking at. But typically, when governments sell bonds, like a 20-year bond, we will say that the first 10 years is non-callable. That means that investor knows that they are going to get whatever interest rate that they're buying that bond at. Then the next 10 years, we could call those, meaning we want to pay those off early. So previously, prior to 2018, we could recall, and it's called advance refunding, and go into those years that are not callable and set those monies aside, and calculation of how much the money that will earn so that when they come due, it will be paid. In 2018, those things, that process, Congress eliminated that ability for us to do that process. So with this discussion of stimulus money, this has risen ahead, this potential to allow governments to advance refund debt. So Sam has identified 3 issues that are candidates for refinancing. Specifically, it's our 2012 bonds, 2014 A bonds, and 2015 A bonds. So outstanding, there's $99,620,000. There's $79,725,000 of that is callable. So there is a lengthy process for us to go through to be able to refund these bonds. He said that there's been, again, this is from Sam, much discussion between state and local governments and members of Congress to reinstate this tool for local governments. Financial strains caused by the pandemic have heightened the call to allow local governments to use tax-exempt bonds to refund or restructure existing debt. There's apparently bipartisan support to allow advanced refundings again, and there's ongoing talks about this, including this change in new legislation to provide COVID-19 relief. However, it's unclear whether or not that will happen. We are, again, several weeks before we could attempt this, and we're setting it up, if it all is in play, that we will do this at the same time that we are issuing this debt. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is point. If we could borrow at the rates comparable to Williamson County, our savings would exceed $6 million from a tax-exempt advance refunding. As we get closer to the sale, we can choose which ones that we will refund. And part of this, the county is required to submit a plan of refunding to the state comptroller's office and receive a report back from that office prior to approving the refunding resolution on August 13th. That's another process that's got to happen. He was conservative in the assumptions in that report. The savings presented assumed rates rose between now and a refinancing, and that the savings were $4 million. He said the report file assumes our borrowing costs were close to 1.5% for 12 to 15-year bonds. So they're recommending that we approve the refunding resolution so that we will be in a position to add a refunding to the new money deal if changes are made to the law to allow for advanced refundings. If such a change happens within the next 45 days, we would be in the position to lock in the savings. If there's no change made to the law in this bill or the next bill, then we have two choices. We could simply do nothing and wait until we get the call dates, or we could do a taxable sale, a taxable advance refunding. A taxable refunding might still save us millions of dollars, but it would not be as beneficial as a tax-exempt refunding. This resolution allows us to do either a tax-exempt or a taxable refunding. Either one. Once the state gives their report, it will expire in 90 days if we do not do anything, and we'll have to go through the process again. So again, this is another one to set us up to take advantage if it presents itself.
Thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have a question for Lisa on these refunding procedures? So basically, she's asking us to give her permission to apply in whichever way we're able to, depending on how legislation is changed or not changed. There's a couple of options there. Kind of give you an idea, we've refinanced since I've been on budget to the tune of about $25 million. That's kind of a rough estimate. We're talking about possibly saving $6 million here. So this is a very good opportunity for us. I personally don't want to let this slip through our fingers. If we're able to get that legislation changed, that would be a really big deal for us. Do we have any other discussion? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the request.
Commissioner Stevens, thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Gooch. Any other discussion? Rhonda, welcome back. She had a power outage. Okay, I think we're all there. No other discussion. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Thank you, committee. I really appreciate that. Okay. Lisa, you're still up, aren't you?
Yes. One more thing. The school board, they go through these loans to where they get a low interest through the state on their energy efficiency projects. They just finished up one, and once it's finished, then we're required to file the CTO 253 form. And it's not necessarily that y'all have to vote on it. It's just giving you the information of what it costs to borrow. This one was approved. I think it started in 2018. Is that right, Mark? I think that's right. I think it was 2018. But it is 100% for energy efficiency installation of an energy management system. The interest rate was at 1%. And it was for $980,761. And it will be paid off in the next 4 years.
We do not need a motion on that. It's basically for information to us. Are there any other questions on this subject? Hearing none, the next thing up is other business. And actually, tonight I'm going to call on the mayor to give us an update on our local government support grants. We had some discussion at this in our last day of business in June. Anyway, the mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, before I get into that, I want to say that Lisa came into my office last week. I believe it was last week. Weeks seem to pass so quickly anymore, and you know, it's just weird during this COVID time. But she was excited because we had closed out our books, and we looked very, very good. I think June ended up, Lisa, being our second best month of last year.
Yeah, of all the months, yes, 6%.
6%. Our sales tax revenue came in. We were
0.28%.
We were blessed. So all of our numbers look very, very good compared to the dismal thought of moving forward back in March when the COVID first hit us. So our sales tax, especially the internet, and I've got more to bring to you soon on the internet. If you recall discussion on G2 Lytics, they are turning that over to the new data. I don't know what that new department is at MTSU. It's the data, whatever department that they have created. So they're turning it over and just signed a contract Friday with MTSU. So they'll be looking into the sales tax revenue over the internet and working those numbers. And I think it's going to be very advantageous. I've sent both Lisa and Chairman some of those graphs that they've sent us, but on a statewide basis, they're showing that sales tax revenue for the state is about 2.5 times what they're currently getting short, meaning that there's that much that we're not getting because it's not being properly reported. So if we get our fair share, that's really going to be good for us. One more thing before I get into the support grant is that this past week, we sold the bank on the corner. For those who didn't get a chance to hear, we auctioned that off. I was hoping that we would told people that I'll be happy if we get $750,000. We actually, between both buildings, the old coin building and the bank, it came in at $810,000, which was, I was tickled that we were able to get that off the auction, and going to be able to put it back on the tax roll. I'd like to give a shout out to Mr. Sandlin, the deputy mayor. He brought in two of his friends to help his auctioneer. And by that, usually in an auction, an auctioneer would get 10%. Well, he was on the clock, so he didn't get that 10%. So it saved the taxpayers $81,000. So thank you, Mr. Sandlin, for your expertise in helping us in doing that. So that'll be something that you can be thinking about, Mr. Chairman, you and your committee and the rest of the commission, where you want to spend that money. Do you want to apply it towards the One Stop? You want to apply it towards, we're calling it 20 North, the old judicial building, or you just want to stick it in the bank? You know, those are the options that you'll need to look at of what we're going to do with the money now that we're going to get paid on it. On to the local support grant. If you recall back in February, when the legislature was in, the governor had estimated that we were going to get about $3 million. And actually, when the numbers came in, we received $3,786,436. I shared this information with you in a list of those items that we had removed, thinking that our budgets were going to be tight because of COVID, thinking that we were not going to loss of revenue was going to hurt us. So I've gone back to each department when I ask them to put together their needs budget and then their wants budget. Some of these items that we've listed, I've shared with you in the past. Some of those things, now I've gone back to them and said, okay, we're ready to move forward if the commission is willing to support these things. I did call right after the 4th of July, I believe, and talked to the chairman, and I think he talked to several of you on this committee. There were some things that if we could get the approval to go ahead and put these out to bid, we already had some quotes on the sheriff's generator. It's an old generator. They were having to look for parts on eBay for that old Kohler generator that they had, and it just really concerned me, as I said back in June, that if that generator goes down, we'll be in real trouble. And just to rent a generator that size to run that type building, from the locking system of all the doors are electronic to the dispatch, which were a primary PSAP, that was a concern. So we did. We were able to. We had 3 quotes, but because Caterpillar with Thompson Machinery was on Sourcewell, and we were able to get a quote on that, the bid has been accepted. The historic courthouse roof, same thing there. It came in at $68,000. The need to move forward on that is because it's the acrylic liquid application, 7 layers of acrylic that will go on top of here that needs to be applied while it's still hot. We can't wait till we get into October to start applying that type of service. Telephone system for the Sheriff's Department. Bid was accepted, $227,000 for the new. A lot of switches will go into that. Back in June, I had recommended for the ambulance department 10 new heart monitors because they're all expiring and won't qualify for reimbursement if we use them after the date where they expire. And the commission chose to go with the 20 originally requested by the director of EMS. So those were ordered through Stryker at $480,000. So we'll have 20 new heart monitors, and they were ordered last week. Paving the inner loop of the historic courthouse. We have 3 proposals, but because of it hasn't been approved, we'd like to go ahead and put that out to bid so we can get that in. That too is another issue on timing before we get into the winter months. We are Goldstein's Heating and Air. We're having to get an estimate on that because Ben wants to get an engineer to come and actually look at how he can disperse the heating and air flow in that building because it is kind of chopped up, but estimating around $375. Health Department, I had originally listed that health department at 200, telephone system at $260,946. And here's the interesting part, members, is that money is flowing like crazy from the federal government and even the state government. So week before last, the governor came out and announced another $115 million to be dispersed to local governments. Of that $115 million, we're going to receive about 4.5.
It's 4 something.
Yeah, 4.5 or 4.7 million for COVID-related expenditures. So out of that, I checked on it, and we can move that telephone system off of this list for local government where it doesn't have to be specified for anything or no restrictions. This telephone system for the health department can be transferred, and we'll be able to pull down from that COVID-related 4.5 million, let's just say, because it is all related to COVID. People calling in saying, "Hey, and we want to be able to record the people because they're calling in and saying, going to their doctor saying, well, the health department said that I've got COVID and I can lay out for the next 14 days and still get paid." So it'll be very important for Dana to get this telephone system. The historic courthouse and interior, Ben's estimated around $200,000, and that's basically, we want to, with the museum going in downstairs after IT moves out, we want to make sure that we have good security because we've reached out to the state museum by putting in the proper security system. We don't have really any security in this building. It's kind of scary after the protest that we had last week and also the death threat that the mayor's office received. We had to beef up, and the sheriff's department did have security here all last week when we were in the building. The volunteer fire department extrication equipment, $182,913. That would be divided equally among all 4 of our volunteer fire departments. That's the Jaws of Life, the inflatable air mattresses, I guess, that lifts the vehicle wreckage or whatever the people who are trapped underneath it would be used, and then Chief Farley and his department has volunteered to work with each volunteer to fire department and work with them on the training of proper use of that. Journey's roof is just a replacement on the Journey's building that we own, where our clients with disabilities are. It's an old metal roof and it's time for replaced. The health department roof, we thought we were going to have to spend several $100,000, but we did get a roof expert to come over and said that we can probably just maintain that roof for another 10 or 15 years by spending about $5,000 a year on that metal roof. So that saved us a lot of money there. Maintenance on the maintenance building where Ben and the facilities and maintenance crew is located, the old school board building, if you recall, over in front of the MAC. It's actually, I drove by there the other day and it's got plants growing out of the roof. There's a tree about this tall. I don't think anything's been touched on it, so it's going to need a new roof. Also, while I'm talking about that, I reached out to the director of the Tennessee Vocational Building, which is next door on Haley Road to our convenience center and the Journey building. We own that building that Tennessee Vocational Department is actually occupying. They have really cut back their needs for space. So I think when their lease runs out, maybe later this fall, they're going to vacate that and break their lease with us, and which is okay because Ben can move out of that building that they're cramped in over there, move into this building on Haley Road. It's got a docking station. He said it's large enough that we can actually have different sections in that building, like one for carpentry, one for metal, whatever they need to for their maintenance and proper tools. It would be a great move. They get excited just talking about it. Lane Agra, it's needing a new paint job. We got some fascia that have blown off in the latest storm. They've been closed over there, and because USDA and I think University of Tennessee Extension, nobody's working in that building. So, and we've been trying to get it. There's so many painters that we just can't get to come and give us a quote. There's so much business out there. They're just too busy. Pause. We identified in talking with Michael, the HVAC system has been giving us problems out there for a long period of time, especially in the back area where the veterinarian actually works and does all the surgeries. It gets up to around 80 degrees sometimes, and we continue to throw its old system, old Freon in there. Workhouse mechatronics program, that was $175,000 estimated. We've taken it out for the last 2 years. That's a possibility of getting those inmates trained with a Siemens certification. This would buy the equipment to go in there to get them trained and where they can get out and actually have a job and go to work for some company with some workforce where they're not returning into the cycle of recidivism. Sheriff's Department needs a new roof on the administration building. It's been quite some time. We've discussed that in the past. We've got a quote for that. Specialist, we see the assessor here. We only gave him about 2/3 of what he'd requested for that program, and I believe that $80,000 would be the final suite of that software package that would kind of round him out and give him that expertise to help all of our citizens here in Rutherford County. And if the commission wanted to look at doing anything with the school and Commissioner Harris on the opioid crisis, there's money there. You total all that up, the numbers that we have, it totals if we subtract it from the 3,786,000, we would still have $881,656.53 out of everything that we've gone through, all the departments we've identified. You're still going to have right at $900,000 left out of this grant. And you can decide whether you want to, what you want to spend that on, if you want to put it towards ending fund balance or rainy day fund, put it towards another building and pay it down where we don't have to go to the bond market. Those are all decisions that this committee will need to make, but it's my job to identify those issues, working with the different departments on things that they had needed or wanted, and we took them out, and now we have the ability of this windfall to put them back in.
Still the possibility of maybe recouping on that item 7 with this additional money that the governor's talking about.
That's correct.
There's another 260,000.
Yes, sir.
Looking good.
Yeah, I'm tickled the way the commission has done this year. I know Lisa was excited. She was dancing the jig in front of my desk last week with the, when we closed out the books, and we all were. It was good. So we were kind of doom and gloom in March, but it's turned out very well, and we're just blessed to be in this county. Some other counties are not, even though, I think we just sold a fire truck to the other night at Public Safety. We sold one of our old trucks to Woodbury because they got some of this money, that they'll put to good use over there.
Committee, any questions or discussion? This is basically an update.
The money is in. We have received the money, I believe, this past week when Mr. Beatty was out. And part of the requirements were that when we receive the money, it has to be placed with the county trustee and be put into an interest-bearing account until the money is expended. And we have until we either have to be obligated or spend the money by April 20th, 21, April something of 2021.
Okay. Since nobody else has jumped out there, I have a suggestion what to do with this money. So we put it in the bank and we save it so we don't have a tax increase in the next 3 years. That's what I'd like to do with it. Now, whether we can make it last that long, we're yet to be seen, but if we have another year like this, we actually are looking pretty good. Any other questions, comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
This is usually the time of year when we look at or talk about the OPEB obligation as that's growing. We don't have the June 3019 numbers yet. The last thing on Mr. Elam's report was through June of 2018, and that obligation has grown to $153 million. And so we really need to begin to have some kind of a conversation about how we're going to plan for that, whether it's setting up a trust or if there's other options that Ms. Nolan can recommend, but we need to do something to begin planning for that obligation.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
We're getting those 6/30/19 numbers. That will be reflected in our next audit.
So you'll be able to answer some of her questions there?
I mean, that's happening now.
Hey, Commissioner Allen, did you catch that?
I did. I just know that the number's just going to be bigger.
It will be bigger.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other comments from the committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned.